Hey guys, Ever-Present here. You may know me in game as Loon. Today we're looking at my Archer bird dog, and I wanted to make a video on how to configure the Orion Autolooter functionality. So Orion's Autolooter functionality is incredibly configurable and very, very useful, but it is a little bit difficult to configure, or takes a little bit longer to configure than some of the more simple ones. So to start off, in Orion Assistant, the Autolooter is under the Agents tab. Agents Autoloot. Now I'm going to stop my current Autolooter and set up a new one from scratch. The first thing that we have to do is under Autoloots, we have to select New and create a new list. I'm going to call it my test looter. Now, whenever I create my test looter, you'll see that the find lists is automatically populated with all items. The way that this works is it's going to select everything on the find list and ignore everything that's on the ignore lists. For starters, you can select a bag that you want it to automatically go to by clicking the magnifying glass and then selecting the box or bag in game. Right here I've selected this little ice crate, which happens to be Bird Dog's loot box, but you can just target it that way. And then I'm going to click Start. Now, since I'm looting all items, what's going to happen is anytime that I kill a mob, it's going to loot everything that it drops. Now, this is helpful. However, if you loot everything, you'll quickly find yourself becoming overweight. So what you can do, and what the first way to configure your loot list, is to create an ignore list. In order to create find lists and ignore lists, it's not in the Agents tab, it's in the Lists tab. So what you would want to do is go over to the Lists tab, and then you have Find and Ignore. I'm going to create a new ignore list, new test looter ignore, and then from here I can select new and then select by target and say, hey, we don't want to loot iron ore, that's too heavy and not valuable. So once we make that change, we go back over to Agents, we stop it, and we say use this ignore list now, and we start it. Now whenever I kill a elemental, I'll still loot everything with the exception of the iron ore. Bird Dog's going to leave it. So the first way to populate your loot list is to just start by saying, okay, give me all items, and then as you go along and you're looting items, just define what you do not want to loot. Let's say that I don't want to loot raw ribs and I don't want to loot standard hides. Then I'll just select new, select by target, select the standard hides, new, select by target, select the raw ribs, and then remember I have to restart my looter, stop, start, and then whenever I kill an imp, this time I'm just going to loot the gold and I'm going to leave the hide and the ribs. So that's the first way to populate an autolooter, by looting all items and creating an ignore list in order to select what you do not want to loot. The second way to create a custom looter is to create a list, and rather than using an ignore list, use a find list. Create new, test looter find, and this time on the find list you have to populate what you do want to loot. I'm going to select new and say, hey, Bird Dog loot gold. At this point you have to go Agents, Autolooter, and see where I had been looting all items previously. I'm going to stop looting all items, and instead I'm going to loot only the test looter find. I'm also going to remove my ignore list and start, and now Bird Dog is only going to loot gold. say I decided I wanted to start looting standard hide, I would go back to that find list, new, select target, and then I can populate that hide. In general, the perfect looter is going to be as you know, customized to you, but the way that I generally do it is I have a loot list of all of the items that I want, the auto loot list, and then you can have an ignore list in order to remove items of specific colors. Like say you wanted to loot the ores off of earth elementals, and you wanted to loot all of them except for the iron ore. What you could do is you could add to your list, your find list, and say, okay, new, select item, the steel ore. You could remove the color, and then that's saying rather than looking for the steel ore, it's going to look for anything that has this graphic. I'm going to start, and it's going to loot both of these. Oh, it's not looting the iron ore because the iron ore is on my ignore list. Right here, iron ore. So at this point in time, I should loot every ore, at least in the stack of 4 or greater, except for the iron ore. If I can find an earth elemental. See, we hadn't seen the bronze ore before, or the copper ore, but it still loots it and just leaves the iron. With a combination of the find list and the ignore list, you can define the exact items that you want to grab and the exact items that you do not want to grab. Keep in mind it does this using the graphic of the item and the color. So if we were to see a stack of just 2 copper ore, it wouldn't loot it because it has a different graphic. Before it would loot that, I would have to go to the find list and select this to show that I want to get that graphic as well. And then it's going to loot it. So there's a lot that you can do with this functionality, and you can choose what you want to loot a lot of different ways. It takes some time in order to populate your list to be perfect, but if a little bit of time is put into it and you populate your lists right, then you never have to worry about clicking on corpses or dragging or double clicking any of the items to loot again. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the UORPG Discord server. I'll set the link in the comments. I'll also put a link to the Orion Discord server. People are normally pretty helpful there with questions as well. Thanks, guys. See you in game.